crime today is whether your government and you are willing to take the medicine and pay the tariff. Now, cutting crime is so essential because the cost of failure will be felt not only in the streets, but in the economy, as New Yorkers learned the hard way beginning in the 1970s. But today, New York is the safest big city in the United States, and we make no apologies for being tough on crime. We've developed innovative new practices and technologies and insisted on accountability from top to bottom. Over the past 6 years, we've driven crime down to a 40-year low by using data to allocate resources to where the problems are, not where the votes are. And let me tell you, fighting crime is not cheap because there's no substitute for boots on the ground. In New York, we pay $5.5 billion annually for the NYPD's 55,000 employees, including 37,000 uniformed officers. We've also worked to diversify the ethnicity of the NYPD because we believe an effective police force must reflect the communities that it serves. Of course, providing safety and security is more difficult than ever before because of terrorism. That threat is constant and, according to the best intelligence, intensifying. And so in New York, we have dedicated 1,000 members of the NYPD to counterterrorism and intelligence duties, and some of them are posted to terror targets overseas, including, of course, London. Their efforts have cracked numerous plots in the last 6 years, even one to blow up a Midtown subway station. Counterterrorism is a matter of national security first and foremost, but it is also an economic imperative. The Troubles, as they're called, in Northern Ireland demonstrated how years of attacks by terrorists from both sides led to major economic disinvestment. And now the tremendous resurgence that is going on there is proof of just how closely economic growth is linked to peace and security. And I think that's true everywhere in the world. The second element of a successful economic development strategy may be the most basic and rare: fiscal restraint. Now, I'm not an expert on British politics, but it seems to me that the Conservative Party in the UK is much more fiscally conservative than many American politicians who call themselves conservative. Too many of our conservatives in the United States want to run up enormous deficits and hope that some way, somehow, someone else will pay for it. That's not conservatism. That's alchemy at best, or if you like, lunacy. And David, I'm glad to see that your party has rejected that approach. Being a fiscal conservative is not about slashing programs that help the poor. It's not about improving health care or not improving health care. It's not about not ensuring a social safety net. It's about all three of those things. It is also about insisting that services are provided efficiently, get to only the people that need them, and achieve the desired results. Real fiscal conservatives have hearts too, but they insist on using their brains, and that means demanding results and holding governments accountable for producing them. To me, fiscal conservatism means balancing budgets, not running deficits that the next generation can't afford. It means improving the efficiency of delivering services by finding innovative ways to do more with less. It means cutting taxes when possible and prudent to do so, but raising them overall only when necessary to balance the budget and only in combination with spending cuts. It means when you run a surplus, you save it for the invariable rainy day. You don't squander it. And most importantly, being a fiscal conservative means preparing for the inevitable economic downturns, and by all indications, we have one coming worldwide. Here in the UK, the Northern Rock Bank debacle is the latest evidence of the turmoil in the worldwide financial markets. We've heard a lot about how this is caused by the collapse of the subprime mortgage market. And that's true, but only to an extent. The fact is, this is not a mortgage crisis. It is a crisis in confidence, and we're all in it together. And it's being driven by rational expectations of a worsening credit crunch, which is in itself a self-fulfilling prophecy. In the United States, we've seen an increase in unemployment and foreclosures, and a decrease in housing starts, although housing starts, I will say, are not down in New York City yet. I know that things in the UK are not so different, but housing is just one industry to worry about. Throughout the world economy, companies are beginning to tighten their belts, less hiring, less investment, less production. We don't know whether the economic downturn will be a dip or a dive, but we do know that governments can't stop the business cycle. That experiment was called communism, and it failed miserably. What governments can do is to keep a bad situation from becoming a crisis. And you do that by saving for the future, not mortgaging it. By giving people confidence that in a crisis their government will help, but that they have the responsibility to provide for their own future day in and day out. In New York, you should know, we not only saved surpluses for future years and paid down future debt, we also put $2.5 billion of our surplus into a trust fund to pay for future retirees' health care. When government fails to save for the future, it makes the next fiscal downturn that much harder to deal with, because it means spending cuts have to be deeper, which affects quality of life, and that affects competitiveness, and that affects the ability to climb out of the recession. The heart of fiscal conservatism is the idea that government should make the next downturn easier to deal with by preparing for it in advance. Fiscal conservatism also means not putting all your eggs in one basket, which brings us to the third element of our strategy: making investments that unleash and incentivize private sector activity and that will diversify the economy. This can mean investing in new transportation or energy infrastructure, or offering interest-free bond financing, or granting certain tax advantages. These and other strategies have allowed New York to increase our film and TV industry, our bioscience industry, and our tourism industry. Both London and New York City have been dependent on financial services for tax revenue, but by diversifying the economy, governments can broaden the tax base, which not only creates jobs, but also provides a little